Hello, and welcome to the Family Histories Podcast, the show for those of us who are sat quietly in libraries, archives, and spare rooms all around the world, tirelessly piecing together our collective social and family history. My name is Andrew Martin, I'm a family historian, and I'll be your host. In this episode, The Disinherited, we hear about a woman whose successful father lived in relative comfort, whilst she and her mother did not. And we go looking for a family who go missing in 19th century Norfolk in England. So, put down that old diary, grab a cuppa, and let's meet our guest. My guest today is a family historian whose detective work has reunited people from around the world with long-lost family heirlooms. He can also be found lurking in graveyards, which admittedly isn't that unusual for people like us, except he picks random graves, researches the occupant, and tells their life story to his followers on YouTube and TikTok. So, before he disappears off to the nearest cemetery, I really should introduce my guest. It's Simon Howard. Hello, Simon. Welcome to the Family Histories Podcast.
Hello, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. We always start with the same question, which is, how did you get interested in researching family history?
Well, my great uncle and great aunt had done a lot of research on my paternal side, and made family trees.
Yep.
You know, in the old days when you used to have to go down Somerset House and actually look through the records physically.
Oh, yes.
You know, so they had a big family tree, and they often talked about the heritage, but my mum's side, I didn't know anything. So that got me really intrigued to find out more about my maternal side. So that just started with a trip down the library and looking at the free ancestry site on their computers and just gathering a little bit of information and then going from there.
So from the information that your great aunts had given you on your paternal line, and now with you being able to access ancestry from the library and see this kind of wealth of online records, were you kind of checking through all the things that she did, and were they accurate?
Yeah, it was very accurate. And, you know, I started with my maternal side, but I think when you start, you're more about building up the names going backwards, and then like the brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So it's more about the stats rather than like their stories.
Yeah.
And as soon as I like double checked the paternal side of the family, yeah, it was spot on.
That's good. Were there any other kind of documents within your family that you could use whilst you're researching, like photographs or certificates and that kind of thing?
Yeah, my auntie, bit of a family historian herself, you know, done some research on ancestry before I did. I mean, at the time, I wasn't so interested in it. So, you know, like as like a teenager, or, you know, when I was in my 20s, I was like, yeah, they're just old pictures.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah. But when you have children yourself, I think you start thinking about your ancestors and like where you come from.
Yeah.
And she had already made an album, so she had made copies of all the old pictures and made her brothers and sisters, including my father, like an album. So we all sort of like had a copy of everything.
Oh, wow.
And so I was able to like look at the names on the tree and then look at a lot of the photos of the people.
Wow. Did this album kind of come along with kind of stories about those people, or was it mostly, you know, photo albums and they're kind of identifying who's in the pictures?
I mean, I knew I was from a fishing heritage.
Okay.
So my surname's Howard, and going back along that line, and, you know, even like their wives and stuff, they were all from like a fishing heritage. So I knew the heritage. And there is a museum here in Kings Lynn, where I'm from and where I live. There is a museum dedicated to the fishing families. So I also visited there, and they hold a big archive of photographs. They got a picture of my great-grandfather already in there.
Nice.
His brothers and sisters, cousins, you know, all the extended family, because they generally married within the community.
Sure. So what was your family's attitude towards you researching family history? Were they interested, or were they kind of like, why are you doing this? Your great aunt's already done it.
My close family, like my parents and my sister, they were like, oh, like just not really bothered by it, like thinking that'd just be, I've just put a few names together and that'd be the end of that.
Little did they know.
Yeah, yeah. There wasn't really, no, there wasn't much interest. I'd probably bore them to death, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I used to have a folder that I used to keep everything in with photographs and information about them. And whenever anyone visited, I can remember I used to get the folder out. And now in hindsight, I think they probably just hated the idea that this folder was going to come out at some point and they were going to have to look through it and I was going to bore them to death. So
Yeah.
But every so often whilst doing that, you'd end up getting this little snippet of a story from one of them. You're thinking, I didn't know that before. So it kind of contributes to that information.
Yeah, I think it's a case of like when you bring up the topic of family history, you probably know you're going to bore people a bit, but then you see a subtle change and people do become engaged the more you talk about it.
Yes.
But the trouble is you've got to know when to stop as well.
Yeah, don't overwhelm them.
No.
As I alluded to in the intro, you've turned your research skills towards identifying living relatives so that you can return long-lost items. How did that start?
Well, I started on social media. So I started with Facebook, just being in groups on Facebook.
Okay.
And helping people who were like stuck with their relatives and things. So mostly local groups. People would put a picture up and said, oh, this is my grandmother. I'm trying to find out when she died. And I'll do the research and help people.
Right.
I thought, okay, I can help people here. I'm quite good at this. I can work out the information quite quickly.
Okay.
But there's a lot of people who are not so tech savvy, maybe, and maybe their brain don't work in the same way. And I put an inquiry into maybe like the Norfolk Records Office or something, and they quoted me to search for a record, and it was a lot of money, to be honest with you. And fair enough, but I thought I could do this, but I was just working like for just above minimum wage at the time, so I thought like I could do it a lot cheaper. So I thought, well, how do I find people who would be interested in me doing their research? So then I started my own Facebook page.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd share all my sort of family stories on there. And the page grew. It grew slowly. And then people were following these stories who I thought, they're not even related to me. They're not even from my town. And they're interested because the stories are heartwarming or emotional or just interesting.
Yeah, they can identify with them as well, probably.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's relatable because they're just normal working class families whose stories are not often told. So the page grew, it grew 1,000, 2,000. But then I received a message from someone who lives in my village. She had bought a house for her son and it was empty apart from a photo which was hanging on the wall.
Right.
And she messaged me and she said, look, I found this photo on the wall. It's a mother with 3 children. And she don't know how old it is, but she wants to reunite it with the family. So I looked at it and I thought, that looks 1910s sort of time. So I asked her who owned the house before. She gave me his name. I looked and everything fitted. Like, that was a mother with 3 children, but 2 girls and a boy. And the man that lived in the house, he had 2 sisters. And all the ages fitted, everything fitted. So what I did, I built a family tree for him. So his mother, his sisters, and I looked who his sisters married. And then I researched what children they had. I then found one of them on Facebook and said, look, I found this photograph. I showed her a photograph of the photograph. And she said, yeah, that's my mother and my grandmother. And then the local newspaper wanted to know about the story. So we all met up in the churchyard where her grandmother was buried. And we reunited the picture with her.
Oh, wow.
And I posted it all on my Facebook page. And people were really interested in it, the comments. And I thought, this feels good. And it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to look for more photographs. And I thought, where can I get them from? So then I started searching sort of antique shops, car boot sales, auctions, looking for more to reunite.
And I think you also found a suitcase full of things.
Yeah.
That you reunited with people in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big one, really, like one of the best ones I've done. I mean, I was walking around a car boot sale and I see this woman had a lot of postcards, stuff that you can just tell by looking at the table. It looked like stuff from an auction.
Yeah.
I asked her if she had any old photos, and she said, no, I haven't. But at home, I've got this suitcase full of old photos. So I said, oh, is it for sale? And she's like, yes. Yeah, George. She said, you can come and look at it if you want. So I took her phone number. I went round there and I looked, and it was absolutely brimmed with thousands of photos.
Oh, okay.
They were dating from probably the 1870s right up till maybe the 1970s.
Wow, that's quite a range.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff was labelled, so it was easy to research.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a family from Kent, and again, I put the names in on Ancestry, built a family tree, matched up the photo, who's who, posted the information on Facebook, because by this time I probably had sort of 10, 15,000 followers on Facebook. And with a good reach, you can start finding people easier because you're obviously reaching more people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I built up the tree and I wrote a lot of the stories, their life stories. And inside the suitcase, there's a letter, and inside the letter was some pressed daisies. And the letter was written by a child who was about 6, 7 years old.
Okay.
And that was like, to Nana, these pressed daisies are from Australia. You know, I want you to keep these, something along them lines. Just a nice little letter to her grandmother with some pressed daisies. And these pressed daisies were in there in perfect condition. You know, I was really scared to touching it. I didn't want to like rip anything or break anything.
Yeah, that'd have been a shame.
And that is from a young girl, maybe Jean, who was the granddaughter of obviously who the suitcase belonged to.
Yeah.
I looked on Ancestry and I was really trying to get in touch with any descendant. I posted in an Australian Ancestry group, and then somebody said, that's my mother-in-law. So they said, I'll contact her. She's on Facebook. I'll get her to message you.
Okay.
So then she messaged me. So this little girl who was born in the 1950s, who had sent these daisies, she was messaging me on Facebook. She's now in her 70s. And she said, yeah, this is my family. This is it. And she told me her mother is still alive. She's
Ooh, wow.
98.
Yeah.
Yeah. She said she's got dementia. But, you know, she'd love to see all the memorabilia and all the family photos.
Yeah, I bet.
So we arranged sending it to her in Australia, which I had to figure out how to send this big suitcase full of photos to Australia, which I've never done before. But
I was just thinking whether it was cheaper for them to fly over and back again or for you to send it.
that wasn't too bad in the end. And
Okay.
I sent it to him. She sat down with her mother and showed her all these pictures. And she said her mother was just like engaging with it and talking about these old photos. And that was a real connection between the two of them.
Yeah, I guess it kind of unlocked those memories for her. And yeah, that's wonderful.
Basically, there was 3 sisters. One sister moved to Australia. Mm-hmm. One sister never had any children, and the other sister had 2 children. And the suitcase belonged to the one that never had any children.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
She had moved local to me, and when she died, the suitcase was then put into the auction. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, another granddaughter messaged me and said she couldn't believe she'd missed this suitcase.
Oh, no.
So she'd accidentally left it behind in the house, and then the people who cleared the house took it away, and then that's why it ended up in auction. But I said I'd already sent it to Australia.
Well, I guess if you snooze, you lose, but it's unfortunate that she missed it out. But it's fortunate that you asked the person and they had it and you went and essentially rescued it and then you reunited it back with the family. So now I guess it's back to the family to reunite themselves if they haven't already, to kind of work out, you know, who gets what or who gets copies of what.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's not a loss overall.
Yeah, I mean, I'd already sent the suitcase, but because I was sending it so far away, I was really worried that it would get lost or damaged.
Yeah.
So I scanned like 90% of the photos in the suitcase beforehand.
Wow. Okay.
And I then sent the other relative, I sent her a copy of everything.
Oh, that must have taken you so long to scan all of that stuff, but very wise. Now, I also mentioned in your introduction that you like to do random grave research and then you make social media videos. They look a lot of fun, but do you ever encounter anyone who's kind of terrible or boring and you have to pick again?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of, I wouldn't say they're boring, but there's plenty of graves I would choose where there isn't really much of a story, just because there isn't many records available. There isn't much documentation of them.
Sure.
Yeah, that
Okay.
can be an issue.
Yeah. So are there any particular things that make you want to pick a grave, like unusual names or the age at death, or is it entirely at random?
I usually pick graves where I know that there will be records available. So if somebody died sort of like in the 1840s and the first census is in 1841, you know that you're only going to get one census amount of information. Mm-hmm. And also, newspapers didn't really cover or include like normal sort of working class people.
Yeah.
There wasn't so many obituaries then either, so you know you're not going to get a lot of information.
Yeah, that's true.
And obviously with birth, death, marriage certificates, that didn't start till 1837. So it's better to research people around the Victorian era. Also, I don't like to research people who are, say, died in the last sort of 180 years, just out of respect for any close relatives still living. But I don't know how they'd feel about it.
Yeah. I've seen you using, I think, AI to generate kind of a video part of the posts that you share. Does that take a long time to perfect? Because I've played around with AI a little bit with some images, and it often gives people like extra fingers or some very weird results. How have you been using that to create your videos?
Well, because it's like a subscription app or website, you get a certain amount of credits to generate clips, like 5-second clips.
Okay.
So if you're putting the prompts in wrong, and it's creating a lot of clips, like you say, with too many fingers, or a horse pulling a cart, but the cart is actually pulling the horse. Things like that.
Yeah.
You're wasting a lot of your credits, so therefore you're wasting your subscription.
Yeah. Oh.
So it's important to keep it quite simple, really, and just know what it's capable of. I think that's the key.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll have a play with it and give it another go. So, is there anything that you'd like to see improve within the family history community or family history industry that could make it a better place?
I think if people were just sort of like more open with their information, with their discoveries, there's a lot of people that feel like because they've sort of discovered something that's theirs and they need to keep it because I don't know. Mm-hmm. Whereas I look at it like, if I've got a picture of my great-grandfather and I'm the only one with that picture, if I put it on Ancestry or I put it on Facebook or something, and 100 people copy it, that means that photo is more likely to be saved forever.
That's true.
Rather than just keeping it for myself. I just think it's better to share everything so everything will be saved.
I think I used to take the attitude of like, this is my research, I've spent a lot of time doing it, and I don't want anyone to have that. But then I can't remember what the point was that turned me around on that kind of idea, because I then decided, actually, this is our collective family history. And okay, I've put a lot of effort into researching this bit, but actually, this is someone else's relative too.
Yeah.
And I'm happy, therefore, for people to have access to the information that I've discovered and the stories that I've discovered and their photographs. So I completely get what you're saying there, Simon, in that you want to share things, but then some other people don't.
Yeah, there's quite a few people out there who don't like to share things. It's the same with my content on social media, like if people message me and they ask if they can use it to show people, and I'm more than happy for the people to sort of use it as they wish as well,
Okay, well, we'll definitely link to your social media channel so people can watch these videos too, but where's the best place for them to find your videos?
Facebook and TikTok, where I post most regular. Also on Instagram and YouTube.
Okay, what should we search for?
Search for Find My Family.
Great, well, we'll put links to those in the description of this episode. Ooh. Time for a little advert break. If you are interested in learning more about family history research, why not take an online course? Pharos Tutors offers short online courses on a variety of family and local history topics. Whether you want to learn more about how to do your research, have a yearning to learn more about manorial records, or are interested in a formal certificate program. With over 50 courses ranging from beginners to advanced, there is something for everyone. Why not take a look at the course list today and plan something for the new year? Visit www.pharostutors.com. You might think that you're just from an ordinary family, but what is ordinary? Are you sure? As you research your family history, you're only ever potentially one clue away from uncovering a good, bad, or just plain ugly relative. And with that in mind, it's time for my guest to share one of their most interesting relatives that they've researched and then tell their life story. Okay, Simon, who are you going to introduce us to?
I'm going to introduce you to Eleanor Thornberry Smith. She was born in 1822 in Kings Lynn, Norfolk.
Right, okay.
Now, her baptism record shows no father listed. Her mother was Elizabeth Smith, but I was always intrigued by a middle name Thornberry, which I always thought was a bit of a clue to who her father was.
Maybe.
So I left it for a few years. I hit a bit of a brick wall with it. I didn't think that was even possible, to be honest with you. Until I found on Ancestry, there was some documents that wasn't even in the search, but when you search for somebody, it wasn't even in the search part of Ancestry.
Oh, okay.
There was these poor law union records for illegitimate children, like these bastardry records, which listed payments, pretty much like maintenance payments now, from like a father to a mother.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I was just searching through. I thought, what are these? I wasn't even particularly looking for anything in particular. And it came up some payments between a David Thornberry to Elizabeth Smith in 1830. So this is when she's 8 years old.
Ah.
And I thought, oh wow, like this is big, this is good, because everything matches there, the date, the name. So I thought, who is this David Thornberry fella? So when I searched on Ancestry, it's quite an unusual name. Oh, well, that is round hair, and I thought, well, let's have a look. So when I searched David Thornberry, there was only one born in the right time frame. There was hardly any born anywhere, but there was only one born in the right time frame.
Yep, sounds promising.
And he was born in 1799 in Thornton Stewart in North Yorkshire. So I thought, well, what's his link to Kings Lynn? Like, how did this happen? So I researched his life.
Yeah, he's a fair way from home, so what was he doing there?
I discovered that he had already married in 1818. So he's had my ancestor in 1822.
Ah, so he's had an affair.
Yeah. So I found him on the 1861 census, and he was living in Washingborough, Lincolnshire, and he's listed as a landed proprietor. But that was all I could find at that point. And I looked through my DNA matches as well. And David Thornberry's mother, I think her surname was Clown or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I had quite a few distant DNA matches as well that matched up. So that sort of like confirmed it a bit more.
Okay.
So I was trying to find out what his connection was with Kings Lynn. So I searched like old newspapers, and I discovered he was an engineer who had worked his way up and became head of works of like building sluices and docks in Northumberland, Suffolk and Norfolk.
Right, okay.
And one newspaper mentioned that he oversaw work in Sutton Wash, which is probably about 8 or 9 miles from Kings Lynn. So he was doing work there in 1827.
Right.
So I imagine these works sort of went on for years. So I imagine he was in the area working on the sluices or docks in the area.
So he was the engineer working on the sluices and the rivers and the drainage. And obviously at some points he'd encountered Elizabeth, and suddenly Elizabeth realises that she's pregnant with Eleanor, but he'd been married already.
Yeah, he had actually married a woman named Sarah Cook of Washingborough in Lincolnshire. That was actually 1820 he married her.
Yeah.
But in 1825 he'd had a son called David Featherby Thornberry, who became a barrister in London. At this point, Elizabeth Smith, Eleanor Thornberry Smith's mother, she married in 1825 to a Thomas Anderson, because they lived in the fishing community. Thomas Anderson was a fisherman. They had like another 5 or 6 children, while David was living his life in a manor house in Washingborough. They had completely different sort of lifestyles.
So he was doing well.
Yeah. So he'd worked his way up from an engineer. So he was like early 20s, but he's already the head of the works. But yeah, he was doing really well. And when I researched his life and saw he was a landed proprietor, he had property in Ipswich, he had property in, I think I said Watlington, which is a village near Kings Lynn.
Yeah, I know it, yeah.
He had a house in Washingborough. And the house he lived in Washingborough was described as like had stables, a coach house. I think it was called Washingborough Hall. So, you know, it was a big property.
Very nice.
And then he died in 1870. And I saw his grave on Find a Grave, and it was a big obelisk, a massive obelisk. I just couldn't believe how big it was. So that showed you his status, you know.
Yeah.
So then I ordered his will to see if he actually left my ancestor anything, which he never did. But he left various paintings of the family. So they weren't just paintings, there was actually family portraits.
Oh, very nice.
And I thought, wow, so like this guy who was born in 1798, he had family portraits and he left them to his son in 1870. I thought, I wonder where these family portraits are. So I followed his son's life, this David Thornberry, and he'd moved to Australia by the 1890s. He had 3 children, and I thought, that's a bit of a dead end really, Australia. I'm not too familiar with Australian records. So I Googled it, and it came up with a result that it said about these family portraits. When he died, the paintings were sold at an auction in Australia.
Okay.
And then the man that bought them from the auction donated them to a museum in Australia. And I contacted the museum, and the museum said they had the portraits, and amongst them portraits was a portrait of a woman they believed was the wife of Captain Cook.
Oh, okay.
And because David Thornberry married a Sarah Cook, and I believe the portrait was labelled Elizabeth Cook.
And that could be the connection.
Yeah, but there was some doubt over this painting anyway. And Sarah Cook's mother was called Elizabeth Cook. So that discovery and me finding these paintings disproved that that was Captain Cook's wife. It was actually David Thornberry's wife's mother. That was his mother-in-law, this painting. And this portrait of Elizabeth Cook, who was supposed to be Captain Cook's wife, is on Wikipedia, it was on all the websites. Now, that information is now disproved.
But that's the point of researching. Sometimes what people think is correct, the research actually proves is wrong. So it sounds a bit sad to have disproved it, but it's good to have disproved it.
Yeah, because David's wife, Sarah, her mother was born in 1750. And she died in 1837. And that is who the portrait is of. But amongst them portraits was also a portrait of my ancestor, David Thornberry.
Oh, okay.
So they sent me that, and I couldn't believe I'd found a portrait of my 4th great-grandfather, who was born in 1798. You know, he died in 1870. So I thought, you know, the chances of actually seeing what he looked like was like minimal to none, you know.
Did he look how you imagined he'd look?
Yes, he looked very dapper, a suit, you know, nice jacket on.
Very nice.
And I could see a family resemblance. I couldn't believe that I'd found a portrait of him. A bit different to imagine my ancestors would look, the ones from the fishing community.
Well, that's true. So, I mean, it's nice that he was paying something towards his daughter Eleanor's upkeep, even if maybe he had to rather than he wanted to. But it's sad that he didn't mention her in the will.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe the children from his marriage knew that he had this child, or do you think he was keeping it secret?
Well, that's the thing. There's 2 ways of looking at it. You know, he was paying maintenance, but at the same time, that seems like the only involvement in her life. And because he's paying maintenance, that doesn't mean that his wife even knew about it. So there's always this question mark of, you know, did his wife know? Did any of his family know? Did his son even know he had a sister? Because there isn't any other sort of evidence linking them together at any point. And she's not mentioned in the will. So, you know, that was like he's paying maintenance because he had to. And then once he stopped paying that maintenance, that's the end of that. But maybe that was how it was in them days anyway. Who knows? that still leaves a lot of questions.
Yeah. So what becomes of Eleanor? Obviously, she's living a very different life from her father and half-siblings.
So Eleanor had an illegitimate child of her own in 1846. So when she was 24, she has a son called Robert Augustus Smith.
Okay.
She then marries in 1854. She has a daughter called Margaret, who died when she was about 2 years old.
Oh.
And then she had a son, John, in 1858. And then her husband died at sea. The same year her son was born in 1858.
Oh, no.
So she was a widow with an older son who was 12, and then a younger son, a baby in 1858.
Oh, gosh, yeah, life was hard then.
By 1861, she was living in Yard in Kings Lynn, which is actually now the museum which is dedicated to the fishing community. And Yard is, there's two houses still remaining. Basically, that part of the fishing community was basically demolished in the 1930s and 50s during the slum clearances. But there was two cottages that were saved that remained there because they were behind a gentleman who had a shop. So these two cottages were renovated and that was all turned into a museum.
Right.
And the house in which they lived in 1861 is still standing and is part of the museum.
Oh.
So I can actually go in that house. It's basically a little cottage of 2 rooms, one downstairs, one upstairs. But I can actually go in the house where my ancestors lived, which is, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's nice to go to places where your ancestors lived or have been.
Yeah, definitely. The oldest son, who was my second great-grandfather, he had 17 children.
Wow.
10 that lived and then 7 died as infants.
Yeah, and that's still a lot that survived.
Yeah, it's a lot of children, 17 children, hey? But he appeared in the newspapers at least 30 times, he was known as the biggest ruffian in North End, biggest ruffian in the area, basically.
Oh, dear.
Always fighting, causing trouble, up to all sorts, The mayor said to him once in a court appearance, "If I have to read out all your previous convictions, I'll be here all day." So, the other brother, his half-sibling, who was born in 1858, he's a bit of a different character as well. He was known as the Cockle King. He was well known in the area, basically.
Okay.
And the Conservative, who was running to be the local MP at the time, got him to talk all the other fishermen into going to this Conservative MP's, like a garden party type thing. So they were all going to go on a free bus ride to Sedgeford Hall and have as much beer as they want.
Very nice.
Basically, they were trying to buy the votes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because all the fishermen were usually liberals, all the fishermen. And, he was trying to buy all the votes, inviting them for beer, basically have a big old party, do what they want. And then all their interviews, that was all investigated. And all their interviews are in the local paper. There's 2 or 3 pages of all speaking to all these fishermen. And it was all down to John, my ancestor's brother. He was the one that the mayor went to try to convince all the fishermen. So imagine he took a bit of a payment.
Oh, dear.
And tried to convince all these fishermen to vote Conservative. But all the newspapers, whenever he did anything and got in trouble, they would always describe him as a real character.
That says a lot, actually, that phrase, a real character. Whenever you see that in a newspaper, you know that story's worth reading.
Yeah.
Oh, well, he sounds like quite a character. So did your ancestor Eleanor, did she live quite a long life?
Yeah, so Eleanor, she passed away in 1904. So she was 82 when she died. So she lived a good long life, really.
Yeah, she did, with such a hard life as well. Do you think there were any kind of hints to her father in any kind of family stories at all, or any kind of letters at all, or was it all kept quiet? And did she even know?
That's hard to say. I don't know if she had known her father. That side of the family is the one, when I started researching, because there was 2 generations of illegitimate children, it was quite a difficult line to research. And when I discovered who was who, it was hard to even find evidence of the families really even being, when you look at an obituary or something, I was looking for people from one half-brother to the other half-brother, whether they attended each other's funerals and things like that. And I did find a couple of newspaper articles that sort of showed the families were close or in contact, because where we are today, the family became very disconnected.
Yeah.
Because my grandfather, who come from that line, his mother died when he was 2 years old in childbirth. She was 34 years old. So anyone that's alive today, even the older generation, I visited his cousin who was 100, almost 100 years old, probably 10 years ago. And there's no one alive that can even remember my great-grandmother.
Yeah, so I guess anything kind of gets kind of lost.
Yeah, so I think that is why that line, the information from that line has been lost. Because my great-grandmother was born in 1893. Now, if she lived to 80 or 90 years old, she would have lived to sort of like in the 1980s, 1970s. But she died in 1929. So, there's a lot of history lost there.
Yeah, and that's very sad. And I guess that's kind of why we do family history.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Simon, for telling us the life story of Eleanor Thornberry Smith. But I think it's time for you to face
the brick wall.
I love a good puzzle, but sometimes those pesky research brick walls can leave me waiting for the solution for years. However, sometimes all it takes is a fresh set of eyes and ears, and a research idea or clue may soon arrive. Yes, it's time for you to see if you can help my guest turn one of their brick walls into brick dust. So, Simon, what have you got for us?
So my third great-grandfather, his name was James Lown.
Okay.
And he was born in 1819 in Terrington St Clement, Norfolk. He appears on a census in 1841, and his parents were Bernard Lown and Mary Gilbert. Now, Bernard, he appears on the census in 1841. He appears on it in 1851.
Okay.
But then I can't find any record of him after that date. I can't find a death record. I can't find him on any following census records. He had a son, Bernard, who was born in 1834. A son, George, born in 1826. And a son, Richard, in 1821. And I can't find any record of them after that date either. And he had a sister, Mary, born in 1831. And I found her marriage and what happened to her after her marriage. That's been discovered. But my fourth great-grandfather, Bernard Lown, is a mystery. And so are three of his sons, Richard, George and Bernard.
Okay. So, for listeners' benefit, how are we spelling Lown?
Lown.
Okay. And do you ever see any kind of variants for that surname at all?
I think there could be a connection to the surname Lowen, which is Lowen, which I have discovered in certain records around that area, which could be a clue.
Okay.
Now, Bernard was born in 1793 in Terrington St John, Norfolk, which is probably about 5 miles from Terrington St Clement, not too far away. But what happened to him after 1851 is definitely a mystery.
Wow. You're kind of entering the period, or you're very well much in the period for certificates. So has there been any clues in the certificates as to maybe him kind of dying or potential?
No, because I can't find a death record. I've looked on the General Record Office Index, looked on Ancestry, Find My Past. I can't find any record of him passing. Now, his wife passed away in 1867 in Clenchwarton, which is a neighbouring village of Terrington St Clement. So that explains why she's not on any further census records.
You should get her on the 61 census.
Yeah, where are they on the 1861 census?
Okay, so Bernard you've got until 1851, but you can't find him on the 1861.
Yeah.
Okay, and Mary dies in 67, so she's on the 1861 as well, or she would be on the 1861, but she dies in 1867.
Yeah, and they had 3 sons, and fair enough, you can't find one record, like the father, Bernard, but what happened to these 3 sons as well?
Yeah.
It's almost like the whole family went missing.
Yeah. What did Bernard Lown do as a job? Do you know?
Bernard was an agricultural labourer, which was common for that area.
Yeah. So he might have moved with them, perhaps, for farming work. But then you've got Mary coming back in 1867 because she's in Clenchwarton.
Yeah. So he was born in Terrington St John, and then they lived in Terrington St Clement in 1841. But by 1851, they're living in Clenchwarton, which is a village next to Terrington St Clement. And then Mary dies in 1867, and she's buried in Clenchwarton. So the family were obviously still in the area, but I can't find them on the 1861 census, and I can't find what became of Bernard or 3 of his sons.
Do you think that maybe it's just a case of the surname is written wrong, or maybe that they emigrated because around the 1850s, 1860s, because there were a lot of campaigns to encourage emigration over to, say, Australia at that time?
I imagine the 1861 census, I have looked through it manually, like just scrolling through the village, and I couldn't find them that way. So I imagine the 1861 census, they're there somewhere. It's just finding them. But maybe when she died, maybe one of the sons or a couple of the sons emigrated, and Bernard, the dad, he might have followed them there. But again, I can't find any like passenger lists.
Okay, so we're looking for Bernard Lown and Mary Lown, who go missing in 1861, although Mary later on reappears. And then there's also their 3 children, Bernard Jr., and George and Richard.
Yes.
Obviously, Lown, as you've said, is L-O-W-N, and you think that maybe L-O-W-E-N could be a variant that they appear under, but you've not been able to find them in Norfolk. Were Bernard, George and Richard, were they born in Terrington St Clements?
So Richard was born in Terrington St John in 1821. George was born in Terrington St Clement in 1826. And then the youngest son, Bernard, was born in 1834 in Clenchwarton.
Okay, so what's the best way for listeners to make contact with you if they think that they have a clue or research idea?
People can contact me on my Find My Family social media pages on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok even. Or they can email me at simonhoward11@aol.com.
Of course, listeners can also head over to familyhistoriespodcast.com, where they can read this episode's show notes and send us a message, or they can just email us at hello@familyhistoriespodcast.com, and we'll pass that message along to Simon. Now, hopefully our listeners are coming up with ideas on how and where to find the answer for your brick wall, but in the meantime, it's just possible that I might be able to help you, but you'll need to follow me through to the garage. Well, here we are.
What on earth is all this?
This is a work of science.
No, I mean all this junk.
Oh, no, this is my secret time machine.
A secret time machine? Really?
Sometimes it works.
Sorry, this is my assistant, the 19th century poet and revolutionary, Shandor Baturfi.
Hello.
Hello. I thought you had some long-lost records in here, not a garage full of scrap.
Hey, this isn't scrap. This is a secret time machine, and, well, I thought you might like to try and solve that brick wall for yourself with a quick return trip back in time.
I'm not sure I've got time.
Ah, but I have. I've got a whole secret time machine's worth, and you could be back here before you even know it.
Could be.
What did he say?
Oh, probably nothing of importance.
You need to reset the hydrotemporal geospatial translocator.
The what?
The hydrotemporal... the green button.
Oh, that hydrotemporal thingammy, what's it? Now, Simon, if you'd like to just go and sit over there... Yep, I can set the coordinates for you, but... when and where would you like to go to?
Clenchwarton in 1858.
Okay, well, I'll just put you... 1st of August looks nice. There we go, all set. Oh, and you'll need this temporal beacon. Keep that safe. Just press the big button on the top when you're ready to come home.
This one?
That's it. Right, here we go. Simon Howard, thank you, goodbye, and good luck. Well, how did we... Oh, spot on. Nice one.
See, I told you. Good as new.
Thank goodness for that. The Family Histories podcast was presented and produced by me, Andrew Martin. My guest was the awesome Simon Howard, with John Spike as Shandor Baturfi. If you've enjoyed this episode, then why not leave us a rating or review? Thank you for listening. A Approximately no family historians were harmed in the making of this podcast.